Mackenzie Shirilla, a case of a wrongful conviction. Items of discussion. Introduction. Basic facts of the case. Toxic relationship theory. Altercation on Interstate 71. Video recordings. Route taken. Sudden medical emergency explained. Vehicle design. Post-crash evaluation. Post-crash hospitalization. Lack of remorse theory. Driver's license renewal. Media sensation. Police investigation, concerns and evaluation. Prosecution evaluation. Conclusion. Sources of information. Mackenzie Shirilla is a young woman who, at the age of 19, was convicted in Ohio on charges related to a fatal car crash that claimed the lives of her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, age 20, and friend Davion Flanagan, age 19. Mackenzie was sentenced to 15 years to life due to this crash that occurred on July 31, 2022, when Mackenzie was 17 years old. Much of the case is based upon conjecture and very little evidence. Certainly not enough to warrant a conviction. In this presentation, you will be presented with facts that lend support that this was a wrongful conviction, pure and simple, and an innocent woman now sits in prison for no reason, other than the fact that she was the only survivor of a very terrible and tragic car accident. Part 1. Facts of the case. The crash occurred on July 31, 2022, at approximately 5:35 and 24 seconds a.m. local time in the city of Strongsville, Ohio. The location of the crash was outside of the Plidco building located at 11792 Alameda Drive, Strongsville, Ohio, 44149, adjacent to the intersection of Progress Drive and Alameda Drive. The red dot on the map indicates the approximate location where the vehicle came to rest after impact with the corner of the building as indicated by the orange arrow. The first public safety personnel on scene at the crash arrived at 6:20 a.m., 40+ minutes had passed from the time of the crash. This timeline will be important later. At the time of the crash, the vehicle was traveling in excess of 90 miles per hour. The posted speed limit for the road is 35 miles per hour. According to the onboard Toyota Event Data Recorder, EDR, the accelerator was fully engaged and just prior to impact there was a hard turn to the right. How the turn was made or who made it cannot be determined. Mackenzie Shirilla was found restrained by the seatbelt, but she was partially entrapped by the dashboard of the vehicle. Dominic and Davion were not wearing their seatbelts. There was a video of the crash showing that the vehicle went through the intersection, through a business sign on the front lawn in front of the building, and then crashed into the building itself. Mackenzie Shirilla, Dominic Russo, and Davion Flanagan had just left an overnight gathering of friends. According to the host and other attendees at the party, Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion were in good spirits and no indications of fighting. In fact, according to one eyewitness, at one point at the party Dominic and Mackenzie were seen cuddling. In a post-crash text message, Mackenzie stated to Christine Russo that she remembered making the turn from Pearl Road to Progress Drive, but claims she blacked out and doesn't remember anything from the crash. Upon arrival of the first public safety personnel, law enforcement officers made a cursory check of all three occupants. They found that Mackenzie was breathing and had a pulse but was unconscious, and both Dominic and Davion were deceased. Mackenzie was restrained by her seatbelt and airbags had deployed, but was found partially buried under the dashboard. She was in a semi-fetal position with her head pointed towards the passenger side of the car and her feet near the driver's side door. She was laying on her right side facing forward. Dominic was found in a face-up position. The front passenger seat was broken. He was laying slightly to the right. Davion was laying on top of the front passenger seat back support in a diagonal type position. His head and upper body was on the passenger side, while his lower body was on the rear driver side. Prosecution believes this crash was an intentional act by Mackenzie Shirilla and she intended to kill Dominic and potentially herself as well. The prosecution alleged that the reasoning behind this theory was that Mackenzie and Dominic had a toxic relationship. The prosecution alleged that Mackenzie intentionally did this by scouting out the area a few days before the crash. The prosecution alleged that Mackenzie showed no remorse for what she had intentionally done. However, you will see these are merely theories and nothing more. Toxic relationship theory. The prosecution alleged that Mackenzie and Dominic had a toxic relationship, however, they failed to provide sufficient details as to why. But the following items need to be pointed out. If the relationship was so toxic and Dominic and the rest of the Russo family were in such a state of fear for Mackenzie, where are the police reports to support this? A records check from law enforcement agencies involved do not show any record of domestic violence, abuse, or disturbances involving Mackenzie and Dominic. If the fear was so strong, it is reasonable to believe that Dominic and his family would have applied for a protection order from a court. The police reports could be supplied to lend credibility to the alleged fear. According to a records search, no protection order was ever issued. The only basis for this toxic relationship theory came from the Russo family themselves, Russo family friend Christopher Martin, a few text messages, and a few people who admitted that they did not like Mackenzie, and they further stated that Mackenzie was not well liked by her high school or the community, although it is not entirely clear as to why. It must be acknowledged that the Russo family was grieving the loss of a family member, and it is only normal to seek justice, even if there is insufficient evidence to prove any wrongdoing. While it is inappropriate to claim that they would lie, it is not out of the realm of possibility for the Russo family to embellish the seriousness of the arguments that Mackenzie and Dominic had. Minor arguments could seem major. Major arguments could be made to seem as if they were life-threatening. We also know that Mackenzie and Dominic had a on and off relationship where they broke up and got back together multiple times. This was acknowledged by the Russo family in interviews. If there were no prior issues from the previous breakups, why now? What made this different? Another item that the prosecution used to support their theory was an alleged, threatening, phone call that Mackenzie made which Dominic recorded on a different phone. The transcript is below.
Dom, if you do not open, you think I'm joking. You think I'm joking. I'm dead ass.
What do you mean?
You know exactly what I mean. You don't even know exactly what I mean. You're gonna come open this door right now, or there's gonna be a serious problem.
The issue with this audio recording is no specific threat of bodily harm was ever mentioned, only a serious problem. This statement is overly broad and the problem could have meant any number of potential choices ranging from an empty threat to summoning the police. Additionally, this recording was made when Dominic locked Mackenzie out of the residence she was living in at the time. While Mackenzie was not on a lease, technically, she would be considered a tenant under Ohio law and therefore be entitled to access the property. This permission can be removed by the landlord/homeowner, presumably Dominic or Christine Russo, by providing Mackenzie a 30-day written notice to vacate the property. Additionally, the recording appears to have been made intentionally by Dominic, presumably because he would know how Mackenzie would react, which would be poorly. If this recording was to prove that Dominic was in genuine fear of Mackenzie, then why not just call the police? According to prosecutors, Mackenzie scouted out a location and found the future crash site to perpetrate this alleged crime. This scouting of the area is based upon a cell phone location traced to the cell towers in the area a few days prior. However, as part of their investigations, the Strongsville police interviewed two people who indicated that Mackenzie traveled Progress Drive and Alameda Drive routinely. One person is Landon Turner, who stated that he was a passenger in Mackenzie's vehicle several times and confirmed with the police that Mackenzie traveled Progress Drive and Alameda Drive regularly. When asked about Mackenzie's driving habits, Mr. Turner stated that Mackenzie wasn't a terrible driver and drove what he considered a somewhat normal speed, usually in roughly the same speed as the flow of traffic. Mr. Turner also stated that when he was a passenger in Mackenzie's vehicle, that he was never in fear when she drove or in how she drove. The next person who the Strongsville police investigators spoke to was Christine Russo, Dominic Russo's mother. In her interview, she stated that Mackenzie was already familiar with the area. According to Christine Russo, Mackenzie gave directions to the photographer hired to take prom photos of her and Dominic. These directions included traveling down Progress Drive past the future crash location. The next page shows the transcript from this interview. Source: City of Strongsville.
And I'm sure, one day it'll come out. It doesn't explain those last 2 seconds.
I mean, you've driven down Prospect, 1,000 times? You lived in Strongsville forever. So we all know it has those two curves.
Oh, and don't let her tell you that she is unfamiliar with prom.
I eliminated that this morning.
Okay, because I'm going to tell you, when we went for prom pictures, the guy that was going with us, she kept telling me, "Oh, just cut through on Progress." She knew, and that was the way that I went to my office. I've not driven down that street
since.
These interviews contradict the prosecution's idea that Mackenzie wasn't familiar with the road or the only reason why she drove it was because she was planning on committing this murder. These interviews prove that Mackenzie drove Progress Drive on a regular basis and that it wasn't a murder at all, but a tragic car accident. Additional point of information. Prom was before the year ended and before graduation and before any alleged toxicity between Dominic and Mackenzie. Toxic relationship theory. Altercation on Interstate 71. According to the prosecution, the reason for the motive stems from an altercation on I-71 between Mackenzie and Dominic. What precipitated this altercation is not known. But according to Christopher Martin, Dominic claimed the argument was involving Mackenzie's driving habits. This information cannot be confirmed by police, and in fact any number of issues could have created the argument. What is known is that this argument upset Mackenzie so much that she resorted to pulling the vehicle over on the interstate. An action that can be construed as reasonable and appropriate. This same incident, Christopher Martin, told police he heard Mackenzie make the alleged threat to crash the car. Specifically, Martin said he heard Mackenzie say, "She'll crash this car right now." What is problematic with the statement provided to the police by Christopher Martin, the supposed key eyewitness, are these following points. The statement took place on November 1, 2022. 3 months after the crash and over 3 months after the alleged threat. The key eyewitness never showed up the day after the crash or in the first week after the crash. The witness did not show up until over 3 months after the crash. It is extremely odd that Christine Russo admitted to police that she had talked to Christopher Martin before he came in and spoke to police. However, in a very long text exchange between Mackenzie and Christine Russo that took place on July 17, 2022. This text message exchange that took place in almost real time paints a much different picture. The text message exchange is as follows. Below is the text conversation between Mackenzie and Christine Russo on July 17, 2022 at 12:45 p.m.
Can you come get Dom? He just grabbed my steering wheel on the highway, trying to spin out my car and hurt me. I am scared to drive because it's raining, so I just need him to get picked up. If he doesn't get out of my car, I'm calling my dad, so please tell him to get out.
Hench is on his way, calm down for now please.
To be honest, I can't calm down when he just tried to end my life. Then he lied to you about it.
I'm just trying to defuse for now, I'm not mad at anyone.
I don't think he's capable of that when he keeps telling me to shut up and to duct tape my mouth. I don't feel safe. He's also threatening to blackmail me to my mom. He's not getting out. He also blocked me, so I can't go pick up any of my belongings at his house. I hope this is a learning experience for him on what not to do to women, because I really don't think he knows how to treat them all.
Stop the fighting and stop lying. When he gets his things, you can get yours.
First of all, I am not lying about anything. Maybe you shouldn't take his words so seriously. You don't know how he treats me behind closed doors. It's never okay to try to end somebody's life or put their hands on people.
No one should touch anyone. No fighting for sure in the car. He never put his hands on you.
You need to tell him that. He tried to end my life today and told me, "Do you want to die?" I almost hit the wall and I could have died.
And you haven't blackmailed him with the cops 100 times?
From the back-and-forth text messages between Mackenzie and Christine Russo, it is apparent that Mackenzie was upset and that the fear of her safety was quite real. In the text exchange it appears that Mackenzie's concerns were completely dismissed by Christine Russo. There is no reason to doubt the sincerity of the texts made by Mackenzie at this point because of the date and time stamp of the messages. It is reasonable to believe that she was in genuine fear for her safety. Keep in mind that Mackenzie is a petite young woman. She's about 5 feet 4 inches tall and only weighs approximately 110 pounds, where Dominic stood approximately 6 foot tall and weighed over 200 pounds. Dominic was also more physically muscular than Mackenzie, so it is not unreasonable for her to fear for her safety. Especially, if what Mackenzie says is true, where Dominic tried to commandeer and either crash or spin out the vehicle, a very real possibility due to the differences in sizes. It appears that Mackenzie tried to do the right thing by pulling over to a safer location and reach out for help from a person she thought she could trust at that time. Unfortunately, the person with whom she attempted to reach out for help was less than receptive. So, who threatened who? From this text exchange it appears that it was Dominic who did the threatening and not Mackenzie.